Be sure to catch the new podcast, Unfiltered with Bob Z. If you prefer your information unfiltered, then you don't want to miss this podcast. Unfiltered is keeping the community informed.
Hello, and again, welcome to Unfiltered with Bob Z, the podcast where we promise to give it to you straight and unfiltered and honestly. Today we have a guest in the house and somebody who I really think that the city of Norfolk is fortunate to have in the position that they're in, and I can say that unequivocally because you know me, I'm going to tell you the truth and tell you how I feel. We're here with Sheriff Joe Barron, the sheriff of the city of Norfolk, and we're going to talk about. I know we talk about everything. Everything is local. Politics are local, and right now, what's going on in the world affects the entire community. So we're just going to get right into it. And I want to just ask the sheriff, what do you think are the most challenging issues that you have faced as the sheriff?
What terrific question, Robert. I said some of the issues that have faced the sheriff's office since I took over, is basically the main issue has been retention of our staff. The turnover rate at the sheriff's office is pretty high, and mainly because of pay and benefits, which they can go to Virginia Beach or Chesapeake and make anywhere from $8,000 to $10,000 more a year. Wow. Because of the way those cities supplement their sheriff's offices. Now we've worked very hard with the city over the last 3.5 years since I've been the sheriff on improving the benefits and pay for our staff. So that we can try to retain them and keep them here, and the more staff that you have that you can retain, the greater the experience is, and then your staff is in a better position to have that skill set on how to deal with problems as they prop up, or dealing with human beings that we deal with every single day inside our jail or the courts or through civil process, and that experience level is important. So one of the greatest issues that I faced was when I first took over was employee morale and their pay and benefits. Now, employee morale, we've done a terrific job in increasing employee morale because we kind of changed the culture. We've been very focused with culture change at the sheriff's office, and we providing leadership training. Which is really how I met you initially.
Right, yeah, I remember.
Which I still get people coming up and talking to me about that. So it was terrific training that you put on. But we brought that to the sheriff's office. We changed our model of leadership from command and control to intent-based leadership. Something that I would encourage people to look at the book "Turn the Ship Around" by L. David Marquet. It's a real example of good leadership. Instead of being, the boss all the time, listen to your people, understand what their needs are, their concerns, and their ideas are. And when you embrace those, people, their morale will be better in your organization. But one of the main things that we did was we changed our motto. The motto now at the Norfolk Sheriff's Office is we serve in the spirit of the Golden Rule, to treat others the way you wish to be treated. And I got to tell you, that's made a significant impact on not only how we expect our staff to treat others, including inmates in our custody, but also how they treat each other. And we've seen the morale go up, and we've made other efforts. The city has worked with us on a pay compression plan, which is kind of on hold now because of COVID-19.
Yeah, I know the budget is on hold. Yeah.
But it's still there, so as soon as we can get back on track, that'll be good. We also have a education piece in which we help pay for deputies' education. They're going to school at St. Leo.
That's important.
Yeah, and we're paying for their education. That's something no other sheriff's office is offering at this time. And we got, for the first time, the city agreed to pay an overtime for our deputies.
Okay.
They didn't have overtime before. They used to have to take comp time and that kind of thing. And so all these little changes, they seem small, but they really impact, morale in a positive fashion. So I think that's one of the biggest hurdles that I had to overcome. The other thing was our inmate population. When I took over, it was like anywhere from 1,200 to 1,300 inmates. And we had a lot of inmates that were in our custody that were either, dealing with opioid or drug, substance abuse concerns, and the mentally ill, which was something you see across the country in jail populations, the mental health problems.
Well, you kind of, I'm kind of slow you down a little bit. You're kind of touching on all my questions that I have.
Oh, okay. Well, let me slow down.
What we've been talking about, I guess what everybody's been talking about, the entire planet has been talking about, is COVID-19, coronavirus. I think, people, my people, you've even given it, they call it Rona now. So,
right.
And we always add nicknames to everything. But how has the COVID-19 changed the way that you operate in the jails?
Well, that's another great question. So COVID-19 has definitely impacted how we do business at the sheriff's office, from our processes and how we do our job every day, to our court operations, to civil process operations. One of the things that we had to do early on, and probably right around March 12th or March 13th, even before the governor or the president declared, states of emergency.
They shut it down,
yeah. We saw this coming, we saw what was going on in Italy. And, when I say we, I know me, doing my reading. And so I directed our staff to get together. We had a big meeting, and I said, we need to come up with a plan. And so the plan was really revolved around a number of things that I think any management does if they're going to tackle a problem. Is one, you need to understand the problem.
Right.
Educating our staff, helping our staff understand what COVID-19 was and what they could do to protect themselves. The same things you hear all the time, social distancing, wearing a mask, washing of your hands, those kind of things. So we put education piece in place. And then we put an education piece in place for our inmate population. We wanted them to know how to take care of themselves. And then the other steps that we took was enhanced cleaning, which was another recommendation of the CDC, enhancing, cleaning more often, wiping spaces down. So we created a whole team that's all they do. They go around and they're always cleaning, and they got this spray that they use that is specifically, it will kill COVID-19. And so you spray it in those areas. But the main thing that we did...
You don't want to drink it like the...
No. It won't kill... Hey, it might kill you before it kills the night.
Like the president.
Yeah. No, don't drink it.
Have some.
Yeah. But one of the main things we did was we looked at how to reduce risk.
Okay.
It used to be that if somebody was arrested and they came to the jail, they go to booking first, right? And the first thing that would happen is a deputy would come out and search the person. Then they would go before a magistrate. Then they go into a cell block, and then they're pulled out and they get their fingerprints and their photos and your information. And then the last thing that they would do is, when we knew they were going to be going into the jail, is they would talk to a nurse, and we would do the medical screening.
Okay.
So I said, well, we got to flip-flop that around.
Right.
We need to know up front whether we're dealing with any kind of medical issues. So we started that whole screening process of taking inmates' temperatures, asking them the questions like, have they been abroad, or have they been feeling ill, aches and pains, and that kind of thing. And if we know that up front, then we're sending them to the hospital first. And then if you're a murderer or a robber, you're still coming to the jail. You're not going to get away. Because we started having people say, "Oh, I got COVID-19," like that was going to keep them out of jail. And then the last piece was reducing our jail population. So we worked with the Commonwealth Attorney's Office and with the chief judges of the courts And we looked at, one of the things that we read, or I read in an article, was to identify inmates that were due to get out within 6 months anyways.
Okay.
They're already due to get out, right? So basically their sentence is almost done. Look for nonviolent offenders, sentences are almost up, and see what you can do to work with the courts and the Commonwealth Attorney's Office to get those people out so that you reduce the number of people that are in your jail and therefore reduce risk. So we did that, and we went from the beginning of this year of about 900 to 1,000 inmates in our custody to right now we're right down to about 620.
Okay.
I got to tell you, Norfolk has not seen that low a number for a jail population in over 40 years. That's a big deal.
That's a big deal. That's a big deal. Yes. Yeah. So, you were a veteran police officer before you
26 years.
became to the sheriff's office. What is your take on, I guess, the current climate of policing in the wake of the George Floyd tragedy? I know that everybody's pushing community policing, which has been around,
For a long time.
For a long time. I know we studied it. I remember when you first became sheriff, you were trying to, initiate all of your policies and everything. And I taught a class that you taught, Introduction to Corrections at Tidewater Community College. They were like, well, I was like, well, whose class is this normally? They said, it's the sheriff's class. I was like, wow, okay. I really felt privileged and it was an enjoyable
appreciate you
experience.
taking that over for me.
I did. So what do you think is like what's your take on the current climate of policing?
Well, it's from the sheriff's office point of view, we're pretty focused on corrections and court security and, civil process. So we don't, my staff doesn't see, the same interactions with the community that the police department does. Locally, I think the police department's doing a pretty good job. I've seen Chief Boone getting out there and meeting with the public on a regular basis and doing a lot of community interaction to try to build that relationship, which I think is terrifically important. I would, encourage, when I look at, my take on law enforcement, I always think about, why do most people get into law enforcement to begin with, right?
Okay.
And I could tell you through my leadership classes, at the sheriff's office, most people come into law enforcement for a whole variety of reasons, right? Mm-hmm. But there's a lot of people that come into law enforcement because they want to be the good guy. They want to help people. They want to be the one that's coming to the rescue. There's something kind of cool about that, right? And then when I talk to my staff, it's anywhere from, well, I needed a job, it's better pay, it's got benefits, that kind of thing. But then I ask them a second question. I said, what is it that brings you job satisfaction? And most of the time, probably 95% of the time, it's when they relate a story to me about how they were able to help somebody or how they were able to make a difference in somebody's life. So for me, I've always believed that most people in law enforcement, most people in the police field, that's what drives them, helping people, making a difference in people's lives. But unfortunately, the current climate is the focus on the bad cops that make it bad for all law enforcement. Right. And at the end of the day, the climate is tough on people who are in law enforcement. It's driving people out of law enforcement that are good people. It's making it tougher for agencies like mine or the police department to attract and hire people. So we're in a climate that's going to be pretty tough for a while. But hopefully, everyone in law enforcement starts recognizing that they can play a role in turning that ship around. I'm going to use L. David Marquet's book title here, because if we all did, basically what the sheriff's office is doing with our motto, serve in the spirit of the golden rule, treat others the way you wish to be treated, right? If we all did that, if you think about that, in law enforcement, and we all made that as a main effort of ours, every single officer, and every single deputy, we could turn the tide of the feeling of law enforcement, and we can really make a difference the way we're supposed to be making a difference.
I really, I mean, I grew up in Norfolk, so I grew up in this charming little hamlet called Huntersville. No, I'm kidding. It was a pretty tough place, but shout out to Huntersville. And I, when we were kids, when we would see the police, instinctively we would just run. We hadn't done anything. We just, as soon as we saw a police car, we just take off and run. And having that mindset, and like I find myself as an adult, and I really, 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 I need to believe that, the good cop theory. I have to, I have to believe. And then when I see some of the things, it's a whole litany of, just terrible things that have happened, at the hand of, some, and like you said, I do not think, and I don't think anyone thinks, that all cops are bad. I don't, nobody, but I hear a lot of things that have happened since the George Floyd tragedy that's become kind of what we, the Great Awakening is what. And,
yeah, can I talk about that for a moment?
Yeah, sure.
So listen, I was born and raised here in Norfolk too, and you were born and raised here in Norfolk, and and we both clearly had two different perspectives. I grew up over in Norvella Heights. And if we saw the police coming around the corner, it was like, oh, cool, let's go look at the police car. Wow. And you grew up in Huntersville, and you're like, oh, here comes the police. We need to run.
Gotta go.
And to me, it's, and police. I'll tell you, the police, law enforcement in general, way back in the day, when we were growing up. That was a pretty rough and tumble, type of environment for, police officers, and some were good and some were probably not so good. For me, the problem is if you look at the George Floyd case specifically, right? It's about culture, right? The culture of that police department in Minneapolis.
Right.
Clearly,
that is true.
Clearly, when you have other officers standing by and watching something like that occur, right, without doing anything, then that's a culture in which you're taught, or the culture is you turn a blind eye to bad behavior. And that's something that absolutely has to change in law enforcement. If you have a culture in your police department of turning a blind eye to bad behavior, that has to change. And that starts with leadership. That starts with leadership that comes in and lays out what the expectations are and what will be tolerated and what won't be tolerated. And I can tell you just from my experience, and taking over the sheriff's office, and just the little thing of, the golden rule, right? Treat others, and we have values that we have instilled, which are integrity in all things, respect at all times, duty without prejudice or without bias, pride without ego, and team before self. And I can tell you, by laying that out as a leader and then expecting that to occur, and when you see instances in which that's not occurring, and holding people accountable for that behavior, then you send a message through your whole organization. So to me, it starts with leadership and understanding the need to change culture. And as you work to change culture and help your organization understand, because let me tell you, there's a lot of good cops out there who grow up in cultures in which, you gotta have each other's back. Well, to me, having each other's back is not turning a blind eye to bad behavior. You want to have an officer's back. When you see them behaving poorly, you stop them, because you could save their career and you can save the impression that the public has with the community, with their police department.
Save a life too.
Right. Absolutely. Absolutely.
Right now, I think when we talk about this Great Awakening, and like I said, I'm disgusted that it's kind of was born out of such a tragedy. You know, so we talk. Hold on, stop, Mike. I can't understand you and talk. Okay, because I don't have that much play with this thing. Okay, all right. Cool. Okay, we good now? All right, great. Okay. Oh, so we talk a lot about systemic racism, and so what? Okay. Okay. Reset. So I guess with the Great Awakening, a lot of people most people are like looking at it from a systemic point of view, where a lot of people, not just law enforcement, but a lot of people, even HR managers and people from is this a racist? Is it systemically racist? So, given the population of your jail, and just do you feel that like with the jail size or decrease, or how do you feel that systemic racism? You think it has contributed to that, or do you look at it from that perspective, or is it basically just other statistics or other things that come into play, and maybe or maybe not is that a consideration?
It's without really studying, the issue. I mean, it's difficult to answer that. I think that, depending. So, you and I are both from Norfolk, right? And and Norfolk is right about 48% black, 48% white. And 2%. The good news is my sheriff's office is that. That's the makeup of our sheriff's office, which is, so I'm really proud of the diversity of our staff. It is rare.
That's very rare.
Yeah. So I know that, in the sheriff's office, I'm going to tell you, I'm going to try to answer the question.
Okay.
But there's some observations I've made. So in the sheriff's office, so the wonderful thing about being a deputy is, you have to, every day you come to work, you're dealing with that same inmate because they're there for a little while, right? So you learn how to talk to people, and you learn how to, otherwise you're in conflict every single day, and you don't want to be in conflict every day. I always thought, ever since I came to the sheriff's office and I learned about these attributes, I always thought, well, most police officers should probably be deputies that work in a jail before they ever become a police officer, because then, they learn how conflict resolution, because they know they don't want to be in conflict every day with that person. When I look at the makeup of the population of our jail, it's overwhelmingly black males. So that is always like, okay, well, why is that when our city population isn't that way? And then when you look at the city demographics and you look at where the poverty is, it is much higher in the black population than it is in the white population in Norfolk. And then there's a study out there, and I can't remember the study, but I remember being on a podcast in reference to it. If you look at job rates, there's a study out there that talks about neighborhoods in the United States that have the highest incarceration rate. What's the zip code for Huntersville?
23504.
23504 is in the top 3 in the country for incarceration rates. And the study, pointed out that it is tied to employment opportunities, and that the employment opportunities are then tied to education opportunities. And so, the police department and the sheriff's office, we're both participate in the Life Enrichment Center. And that's where you go in, and there's children, if they haven't learned how to read by the age of 3, by the 3rd grade, I'm sorry, then, they're not taught reading after that. And then
prison to school to prison pipeline.
Yes, school to prison pipeline. So we participate to try to stem that pipeline. Now, so when I look at the problem, I'm trying to look at it holistically rather than just numbers. And for me, That's why our school systems are so important, and improving our school systems are important here to Norfolk. When you talk about working on the problem systemically, to me, it's poverty, it's education, and it's job opportunities. And I think those are things that have a bigger impact on my jail population than just the issue of race. But still, it is affecting, black males at a higher rate than it is anybody else. But I will say this again, since taking office, our jail population numbers have been reduced dramatically. When I took over just 3.5 years ago, we were looking at 1,100, 1,200 inmates in our jail. We're now down to about 620, almost half. And right about half of the population. That's a number that has not been seen. Maybe I said it before, but hasn't been seen in Norfolk in over 40 years. Wow. So that's a good thing.
Wow. One of the things that I tell people when we start talking about systemic racism, I say, well, why are people surprised when they open the oven and you pull it out and it's a cake? Why are you surprised it's a cake? If you put all the ingredients in the cake, if you put vanilla extract and flour and eggs and butter, and you beat it up and you put it in at 325 for 35 minutes and it comes out, it's going to be a cake. Same way with, if we're looking at jail population, if you put concentrated poverty, drugs, lack of education, lack of employment opportunities.
Lack of opportunities, yes.
When you open it up, it's going to be a cake. It's not...
Not just employment opportunities, but sustainable employment.
Right, exactly.
Sustainable employment.
And with that, I'm a big advocate of training of all kinds. So, we have to take a look at that. But one of the things I wanted to ask you about is that, and with everything now has been a focus on community policing as far as police force activities are concerned. But community policing is a big word. Won't you tell us some of the things that your office is doing? I heard you've been doing big things in the community.
Yes.
So tell us about some of those.
Well, so we've really expanded our outreach. We're a smaller organization than like the police department. And so we look for the opportunities where we can have an impact and not try to overlap what the police department is doing because, we're a different entity. So our focus has been on, reaching out to our Norfolk youth and to our senior citizens. And that's been something that we've worked on for a long time, but we've really expanded it. Before we used to do just... we had the Senior Watch program in which if we identified a senior citizen in our community that was living on their own and didn't have family or friends anymore, feeling kind of alone in the world, and we sign them up in our Senior Watch program, and a deputy would go by and stop and talk to them, make them know that they're still valued and that kind of thing. I saw what the city of Chesapeake was doing with their annual Senior Support Services Seminar, which was a big deal over there. And I said, well, we should do that in Norfolk. And so we created the very first Norfolk Senior Support Services Seminar in which we bring hundreds. I think we had over 800 senior citizens that came to the event last year, in which we're connecting senior citizens in our community with services that are in our community, specifically geared towards or for the seniors that live in our community. Terrific stuff that's out there, anywhere from checking your hearing and your eyesight, and all kinds of different programs. And then we put on a big lunch for them, and then you have people like the mayor will be there and say a few words to them. But that's part of our outreach, and they get to intermingle with sheriff's deputies in a positive way. So we do that for our senior citizens. For a long time, the sheriff's office has had the sports program, or where we're teaching youth skills in football or basketball or baseball. We couldn't do it this year because of COVID-19, but we do plan to continue to do that program. We additionally had a summer camp in which youth, trying to give them something to do where they can do canoeing and archery and swimming in a pool and kickball and going on field trips and that kind of thing. We didn't have that opportunity to do that this year. We offer all those things for free, by the way, because we know, we have a large portion of our community that just can't afford to send their kids to camp. And so we offer it for free so that, people from the poorer communities have an opportunity to send their children to something that's both a positive interaction with law enforcement, but also it gives them something to do. And my last thing is, that Norfolk, whether you know it or not, has the very first family justice center in the Commonwealth of Virginia. It's right downtown over here on Plume Street.
I did not know that.
Yes, the very first. Look it up. It's something that started out in San Diego, and now it's across the country. Virginia didn't have one. And the Family Justice Center is basically wraparound services for victims of domestic violence or rape and those kind of things. And there's an offshoot to that, and it's called Camp Hope. And Camp Hope is about the youth that live in those homes, that witness domestic violence or other types of violence to either their mom or their dad. As we know, and Robert, is a lot of times children internalize those things, and they have resentments or anger, or they don't know how to deal with their feelings related to those things. And Camp Hope is about bringing youth together that have those experiences in a actual summer camp, and these skills exercises to help them overcome problems so they can learn how to overcome problems on their own. It's a trauma-informed camp. And so we got grant money to bring that camp to Norfolk. It will be the first one in the Commonwealth of Virginia. And so that's something that we're doing as part of our community outreach.
One of the things that I've been, because I've been a workforce developer, and in different capacities in different organizations, and I was just thinking, and I don't know if you may already have this in place, but they have a workforce center that's like right around the corner from here, and it's a workforce center. And I was just thinking, are there any? Do you have a person that's connected to the workforce, or is it a thought process that you might want to bring somebody in to kind of like? If a person has a vocational desire, let's say they're in for 60 days, 90 days, or whatever. In that time, I know in a couple of weeks, there's certificates that you can gain for different activities. But, maybe partnering with the city or something to have
so we have such a program.
You do? Okay.
Yeah, so we started, we're the only sheriff's office that created a partnership with Priority Automotive and Tidewater Community College, a certificate-based program in automotive mechanics. We have trained since I came into office. We partnered with Priority Automotive, and Dennis Elmer, who's the president of Priority, a wonderful man, because he built the facility for us to have this program.
Oh wow!
And we have been training inmates, and they have to have at least, I think it's a year left in their sentence, or maybe a year and a half, because it is a TCC-based certificate, program, an education program. And they what they do is it's a work release program in combination with a vocational program, first of its kind that we have here in the Commonwealth. And we're teaching automotive skills with TCC on site, and then they get to work on cars as part of work release, and they're getting paid while they're doing it. And then when they get out, they have this lump sum of money that they've saved up from working in the program. So they're getting paid and they're getting an education at the same time. Do you know, Robert, that when they get out, first of all, automotive industry is one of those industries that needs people.
Right.
Now, nobody's getting into auto mechanics anymore.
Wow.
And the inmates that are getting out, they now have a sustainable living, right? Well above the poverty level. In fact, we had one inmate who his first year made over $70,000 in auto mechanic. Now, that's making a difference.
Right.
And, and I'd like to say, our focus at the sheriff's office, most organizations know what they do, right? Simon Sinek, he's a leadership writer. I'm sure you've read him. He's got this book that says start with why. And he says most organizations know what they do. We know what we do. We run a jail. We run court security. We do civil process, right? Most know how they do it. We know how to run a jail. We feed people. We count people. We have a community corrections program in which we are, in a work release program and that kind of thing. But most organizations never identify their why. So for me, I've identified our why at the sheriff's office. Our why, our purpose, is to make a positive difference in people's lives as far as we can reach. And I think the importance of stating that is to let everyone know in my organization every single day, look for an opportunity to make a difference in somebody's life. If you do that, then we really could make the world a better place to live. We're doing that with our Priority Automotive program. We're also doing it with, our work release program. It used to be, that our work release program would go out and find inmates jobs in the community, and most of the time it was like washing dishes or being a cook or low menial jobs, but it was paying jobs. What I realized and what my work release staff realized is that these were not jobs that people were staying in when they got out of jail. So we started looking for employment opportunities in which there was an opportunity or a possibility that when the person got out of jail, that they would stay working there, and it was a sustainable job for them, and it provided a decent amount of money for them. So we changed the way we operate and what kind of jobs we're trying to get people into. And I think it's working well for us. Our jail population is down. I don't think that's by accident. I think in part it's because of the programs that we offer and some of these things like the Priority Automotive program.
Well, we've had a great conversation, and that's the kind of, I guess, whatever kind of cake you're going to bake, it depends upon your ingredients. So if you change your ingredients, then you can still bake a cake, but you'll have a cake that's going to have some good substantive things that are associated with it. So I want to thank Sheriff Joe Barron, for coming out, and nice talking to you.
Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity. Always great to see you.
All right.
Take care, my friend.
Social distance.
Right.